Welcome to the Nourished Child Podcast, a show about childhood nutrition, feeding kids, and dealing with the ups and downs of growing a healthy child. Here's your host, registered dietitian and childhood nutrition expert, Jill Castle.
Hey friends, I'm Jill Castle, a pediatric dietitian, mom to 4 kids, and host of this podcast. I started this podcast in 2016 as a way to help families and healthcare professionals learn more about nutrition and feeding kids. My goal has always been to make nourishing your families easier through breaking down science into understandable concepts you can put into practice right away and shedding light on and improving the emotional well-being of kids through feeding and food. You can always go deeper on my website, thenourishedchild.com, where I have resources for children ages birth through teen. I'm always so grateful you're here, and I hope you enjoy the show. Hey friends, welcome back to the Nourished Child Podcast. I've got another bonus episode for you. Jill here, host of this podcast, and I've had a very exciting month doing lots of podcast episodes as a guest to talk about my newest book, Kids Thrive at Every Size. And today I'm sharing my interview with Sara Dean from the Shameless Mom Academy. Sara and I have been friends for a few years. She runs an amazing podcast. I hope you check it out. And she helps women in business and is a former fitness professional who decided to leave that industry and pursue other things. And I'm going to actually have her on my show coming up this fall or winter to talk about what it was like to work in the fitness industry and why she decided to leave it and pursue different things and what it's like raising a son and all kinds of things. We're going to have a fun conversation. But I wanted to share with you the interview that she and I had together on her show. And we talked about the things that related to Kids Thrive at Every Size. And we had a nice conversation highlighting things like the common worries for parents who are raising children who have larger or smaller sized bodies, and some of the things that might surprise you about a child's size. We also talked about how growing up with a smaller or larger body makes life or may make life more challenging for kids today, and what you can do as parents to sort of mitigate that and support your child. We talked about family culture and the impact of family culture beyond just food and nutrition as you raise children. And then last, we talked about a lot of stuff, but I'm just highlighting a few things that we talked about. We did talk about the reality that most kids experience body dissatisfaction across all genders, all sizes, and starting as young as age 3. I hope you tune into this episode. I hope you enjoy it. Please make sure you go out and check out Sara Dean's offerings on the Shameless Mom Academy. You can go to her website, same name, or check out her podcast. Here's the episode.
Jill Castle is one of the nation's premier childhood nutrition experts. She's the founder and CEO of The Nourished Child, a nutrition education website and podcast for parents. She is the author of 6 books, including Eat Like a Champion, Try New Food, and the co-author of Fearless Feeding. Her newest book, Kids Thrive at Every Size, comes out next week on August 13th if you're listening in live time. Known for her ability to blend current research, practical application, and common sense, Jill believes that children can thrive at every size. With her paradigm-shifting whole child approach, she inspires parents, healthcare professionals, and organizations that serve children and families to think differently about young people's health and well-being. Jill is a sought-after speaker, advisor, and media contributor. She serves as an expert reviewer for Parents.com, has been featured as a guest expert on CNN, The Washington Post, The New York Times, Forbes, Newsweek, and Time, to name a few small names. Jill is also a shameless mom to 4 adultish children and lives in Massachusetts with her husband. I'm lucky enough to call Jill a friend, and when she shared her concept for this book with me, I knew that she had to come on the show and talk about it. We've dedicated a number of episodes in the past to talking about women and body image and diet culture, but we haven't spent as much time talking about kids' body image and diet culture. And as I'm raising a growing child myself, I'm hearing across genders that this is something that impacts all kids, all families. And it starts at a really young age, and it really seems to happen across class, across gender, across all these different spectrums of identity. And it's time for a really important conversation around this. And I knew that Jill would be the best person to talk about it with. I know that many parents worry about their child's size and they seek advice, usually on the internet, usually on social media. And when we seek advice around these children's size and children's bodies, there's often a lot of advice that comes in the form of eating less and exercising more. But these approaches can come with great risks. So Jill has developed a fresh path forward, a path that ensures physical health and emotional well-being are equally centered. And I think this part is so important, and it's why I agreed to have this conversation with Jill, and Jill exclusively. So Jill's path forward ensures physical and emotional health and well-being being equally centered, using what she calls the whole child healthy approach and her 8 pillars of wellness. So listen in to hear Jill share a sneak peek into what it's like parenting 4 young adults, which was very fun to hear, common worries for parents of children who have larger or smaller bodies, and what might surprise you about your child's size, the fix size model versus embrace size model of approaching your child's body size, how growing up with a smaller or larger body makes life more challenging for kids today, the significance between feeding and eating, and how you might be helicopter feeding your child or children. Also, you'll hear me raise my hand on this one. I was like, oh boy, I think I might be guilty. So we're in it together. The impact of family culture beyond food and nutrition when raising a healthy child, and the reality that most kids experience body dissatisfaction across all genders, all sizes, and starting as early as age 3. This is obviously a really important conversation. It's something I'm so passionate about because of the work that I've done in the health and wellness industry with women over the last couple decades. So I'm really, really excited and honored to be able to have this conversation with Jill here. Please go pre-order the book after this. So when you're done listening, or you can do it right now, go pre-order Kids Thrive at Every Size. We have everything linked up in the show notes, but you can just pop that title into Amazon if you want to keep it really easy. So again, that is Kids Thrive at Every Size by Jill Castle. You're going to want to get the book. When you pre-order the book, you get a bunch of bonuses, including an opportunity to meet with Jill in person at an in-person event coming up in October. So you want to pre-order the book now to get her extra goodies. So go over and do that. Listen to this episode. I hope that you'll enjoy it. I hope that you'll learn something. And I hope that this will help you in your parenting and also help us all as we move forward in a way that allows us to help children thrive at every size in a culture that has really made that so difficult, if not impossible. And we have the opportunity as parents to start fixing that now. So with all that said, please join me in welcoming Jill Castle to the Shameless Mom Academy. Jill, welcome to the Shameless Mom Academy. I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
This will be very fun. And I always have to tell people how I know guests if I have a pre-existing relationship. So Jill and I are in a mastermind together with our speaking coach, and we have gotten to be in person together multiple times with that group of people who are amazing. Yeah. And my favorite memory is having to do role plays with you in that group. And I do not like doing role plays, and I do not like doing especially choreography. It's become a big joke in our group. But Jill knows how to get up and just kill it every time. And it's like doing improv, and it's so much fun with you.
Oh my gosh. And I just don't like that stuff either, but I don't know. There's something that comes out of me during those moments that is just not my normal self.
It's so fun. It's so fun. It's fun to see people who professionally act in childlike, imaginative
juvenile ways.
Yes. So we have to, we'll thank our coach, Alexia for that.
Yes. Thank you, Lex.
for all those opportunities, even when I'm rolling my eyes.
Yes. Definitely gets us out of our comfort zone.
Totally. So your role in that group is a really intriguing one to me. So we, across our group of speaking professionals, you are the only person who works with children and nutrition, and which crosses over with my past life in fitness and nutrition. but I didn't work directly with kids, but I've worked with kids in the past for other things. And so we have like kind of these little overlaps. When I heard that you were writing a book about kids and nutrition, I was really, really excited to learn more about what this might be all about. And you sent me a copy of the book in advance, and it's incredible. And my listeners know that I'm very picky about who I bring on the show and how I bring conversations on the show in terms of nutrition, bodies, children, all that is like, it's all very sensitive. And I am so excited that you're here to talk about this in a way that I think will be really, really supportive to our audience. So with that, can you give us a little bit of info beyond your bio about your personal and professional life, and also what you're excited about right now, maybe related to the book launch?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I feel like I'm in a lot of transitions right now, which is exciting and at the same time, a little uncomfortable. Professionally, I'm collaborating on some really exciting projects with some larger organizations. I do have a small private practice, so it's always fun to touch base with my private families that I work with. And, you know, it's summertime. I'm always trying to like scale back work a little bit and go have some fun. And, you know, Sarah, I'm a huge lover of golf. And so I'm trying to play some golf, but I'm not playing as much as I typically do in the summer because I'm working more than usual. The book, obviously, Kids Thrive at Every Size, is very exciting. I feel like this has been a 2-year project. And finally, it's coming to fruition, which is super exciting and scary at the same time, to be honest. And then personally, you know, our family's going through a lot of transitions too. We're moving into sort of our forever home in the next month. My kids, who I have 4 of them, they're all sort of grown and flown. My youngest one just graduated from college. And, you know, they're all leaning into transitions too. And I'm trying to support them as they take on new jobs and move to new apartments and have new boyfriends or girlfriends. And it's just, there's a lot happening in life right now. All good stuff. But, you know, when things are hectic and crazy, they can be exciting and also a little bit stressful. So that's where I am right now in this moment in my life.
I love it all. Well, the last time I saw you, you were leaving almost immediately after I saw you to go golf in Ireland.
Yes.
which is so fun, but it speaks to your love of golf that you were like figuring out how to get your clubs to Ireland.
Oh, yes. Yes. Well, and just as a side note, my husband loves to play golf too. And so that is probably the one major activity that we get to do together and enjoy doing together. So yeah.
The other
he was instigating that trip.
It was a joint little event, not little, a joint big event. Yeah. One of the things that jumped out at me as you were talking about parenting is that you are telling our audience that parenting does not end at 18. I know that we have many listeners who have children under 18, and maybe for better or worse. Like, I don't want to be done at 18, although I'm sure there will be many times between now and then that I will want to be done. But your like notification to us all that you're still in it at all ages.
You are, in a different way. I would say I do less telling my kids what to do, which I used to do when they were a lot younger, and more advisory consulting role. And it's really, I was thinking about this the other day. I was actually having a conversation with my son last night, who is getting ready to move to California from the East Coast, where I'm located. We're located outside of Boston. And I must have said to him 3 or 4 times, trust your gut. You have good instincts. You know what feels comfortable and what doesn't feel comfortable. And I must have repeated that in our conversation. And I think that that's a good sort of representation of sort of what it means to be a mother for me right now. A lot of listening, a lot of supporting, a lot of reinforcing that they have everything they need to be successful, to move forward, and to really use a lot of self-trust in the process.
Yeah, and I feel like that's when you feel like you've kind of made it, when you can just be like, trust your gut. Like, I've taught you we've given you all these tools so that you can listen inward, that you can know that you have the answer inside of you. I love that. I want to dig into the book a little bit. I want to talk about kids and bodies, which is the basis of the book. So I was going to hold the book up on camera because we're recording on camera, but that would not be meaningful to our audio audience. Yes. The book is Kids Thrive at Every Size: How to Nourish Your Big, Small, or In-Between Child for a Lifetime of Health and Happiness. And what I love about this is honoring all body types of children, and children live just like adults, live in all different types, shapes, sizes of bodies. Can you talk a little bit about what parents might struggle with if they're raising a child in a larger body?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential struggles for parents who are raising larger bodied children in today's world. Obviously, fear and worry about their child's health. And I think a growing concern around emotional well-being. And that is, we know that after the pandemic, the rates of anxiety and depression in children really jumped quite a bit. And if you're a parent raising a child in a differently sized body, whether it's a larger body or a smaller body, I think there's an elevated worry around how are they faring in this world that is so judgy about size? How are they really doing? I think parents also feel a bit of frustration with the situation potentially because they're trying to do the right thing. They're trying to feed healthy meals and healthy snacks, but it's hard and it might not be as effective as they want it to be. I think they're also probably a little frustrated with just our food world. Food is everywhere. It's tempting. Even if you're doing all the right things at home, you may be sending your child out into the world to sports, to school, to church organizations, and they're getting presented with food at every turn. And managing that stuff outside of the home can be really frustrating. Confusion. I think parents feel confused. Why do I have one child that's smaller or mid-sized and another child that might be larger in size? That can be confusing. I feed them the same. I treat them the same, yet their bodies are different. Their eating habits are different. Their approach to food is different. It can be very confusing for parents. And I think also society gives parents a lot of mixed messages about size. You have sort of this, I call it the fix size model in the book, which is really sort of that medical-based model. Here's a problem. Your body's a problem. It's too large. It's too small. We need to fix it. And this is how we're going to fix it. We're going to change the food. You're going to exercise more. But then you have also another model that's the embrace size model. That's like, let's just love your kid as is and don't worry about, changing their size. I think what both models can be conflicting and polarizing sometimes, and this is confusing for parents, but I also believe that both models have sort of this agreement on lifestyle behaviors. And that's where sort of I've taken the book. Like, let's talk about the lifestyle behaviors and the attitudes and the beliefs that can really support children's health and their well-being, not just one or the other. And just, guilt and shame, I think, is probably a common feeling from parents who are raising a larger bodied child or a smaller bodied child. What am I doing wrong? Did I cause this to happen? Parents oftentimes have other family members, friends, peers that are saying, did you see what she's feeding her kid? There's just a lot out there. And then if parents have had their own past struggles with bodies or foods, their children can really trigger them. And sort of navigating all of that can be very difficult as well. A lot of stuff going on for parents.
Yeah, that was so insightful. And I was actually going to ask you about the last thing you just said before you said it. So I'm so glad that you ended with parents' own baggage around this. And I say this as someone who had a mom who is a lifetime member of Weight Watchers and has been since like 1982, and who took me to Weight Watchers when I was 13 years old and was raised around women who were always on diets and talking about their diets all the time. And I don't think that was an uncommon experience if you were born between like 1975 and 1995, and maybe not uncommon still today. And so that to raise a child with a body of any size, but I think especially if you have a child whose body is of a larger or smaller size, I think brings up a lot of mom's own stuff because of the messages that we received. And we have so much that we've internalized, and it can be really complicated to try to support our kids if we haven't been able to heal that part of ourselves or rectify or reconcile what that journey has looked like for us personally.
Yeah. I mean, I think even too, if you have worked through those struggles.
Mm-hmm.
Your child can still trigger those old feelings. And oftentimes parents are left with, am I triggered? Am I feeling triggered? Why am I reacting this way? Why am I, acting from the wound is something that we'll say sometimes. Like your inner child, that hurt child is the one who is intolerant or yelling at your child because that you caught them with extra food or they're being, they want to lay on the couch and not do anything. That inner child that may even have been sort of, worked through or can still come out, And our kids can bring that out in us.
Yeah, definitely. What might parents be surprised to learn when it comes to their child's size?
This is a great question. I think one of the things that I feel is important for parents to know is that, size is largely a genetic inheritance. So we know that your size, your frame, your shape, where we deposit body fat, how much muscle we carry is an inherited trait. It's strongly genetic. For example, height is 80% heritable, meaning that if you put a group of people in a room, 80% of the tall people would have the gene for being tall. The other 20% is down to lifestyle factors like nutrition, for example. The research tells us for size or the tendency to carry extra body fat, it's a 40 to 50% chance of inheriting the genes. And there are many genes, thousands of genes that can inform the size and shape of a child. So even some studies, current studies are showing it's up to 85% likelihood. So what's also interesting is that when researchers look at identical twins who are not raised together, they're raised in separate homes, they show a 70% heritability for size. And so it is interesting. So we know that, the rest of that equation is environmental factors, lifestyle factors, food and nutrition, sleep, screen time use, physical activity or movement. There are a lot of things that inform whether a child expresses those genetic inclinations to be of larger size, for example. So, I think that there's some relief in knowing that you're not the cause necessarily of your child's size, but there's also empowerment in knowing that you can have influence over the expression of those genes. You can't change the genes, but you can and have choice over how you cultivate physical health and emotional well-being in your child.
That is so interesting, especially the twin studies.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting. And maybe helpful information and even a little bit of, I want to say, relief for parents who think that this is like their thing to fix. And you mentioned the fixed size model, that we can support healthy lifestyles. And that is, a great way to keep our child healthy and keep our child, to protect our child from all sorts of various things, but also recognizing that this isn't our thing to try to control.
Yeah. I think the other thing too is that, there's a lot of social pressure today to raise a child of an ideal size, not larger, not smaller, but in the middle somewhere. And, there are very few children that grow up in an ideally sized body.
Yeah.
And when children feel that pressure, and even when the parents feel that pressure to conform to these social norms, it really can compromise emotional well-being. It can compromise self-esteem. It can compromise worthiness. And that's where, when we do focus on shrinking our children and leading with that, right? Mm-hmm. It's not wrong to want your child to, be in a healthy body. That's not a wrong thing. But when we lead with that, we can run the risk of harming our children's emotional well-being. And that's what I try to really bring to light in this book, is that we get so hung up on the physical aspect of being in, quote unquote, a healthy body. What is that, right? We could even dive into what even is that. But when we lead with, we need to conform and look a certain way, we can compromise our kids' feelings about themselves. And that in and of itself can change their health behaviors and how they are motivated or not around health. So it's pretty interesting.
So interesting. And I agree. Like I've seen across body types and sizes and gender, like among my son's friends and peers, that I've seen all of that, like that insecurity around all different sizes and shapes and bigger or smaller, or a child who has an average body size or, more middle of the spectrum body size and also has insecurities around it. It's very interesting to see. And I think this is so much of our messaging and around our culture around bodies. And you mentioned always leading with healthiness. And one of the things that I've noticed over time and coming out of being in the fitness industry for so long and coming out of it is that I think a lot of our language, diet culture is so insidious that our language has shifted while our thoughts have not. And so instead of saying like, I'm just trying to lose weight and get skinny, people now it's like, well, I'm just trying to be more healthy. But what they really mean is, I really want to lose 10 pounds in the next 6 weeks. And so what I'm noticing is there's the morality used to be that you're trying to get skinnier, like it was good to be skinnier. But now the morality is trying to be healthier and trying to have quote unquote healthy kids with this vision of what a healthy child looks like. And I think I would love to hear your take on the morality of health, because I've talked about this on the podcast with different experts for adults, but not for kids. And I think that this is a dangerous territory, but you also don't want to not encourage healthy habits. Like, how do you encourage healthy habits, but not have that be like something that indicates a person's health or value or, moral standards?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think healthy habits is the path forward. And I, in the book, I talk about healthy habits as pillars of wellness. And they're not just, sleep and physical activity and screen time, which is what you will hear left and right if you go on the internet right now. I've blown it out to also include food, eating. Like we are building eating habits in our children, feeding. That's the relationship.
And I wanted to mention that because you have that as two different pillars,
right?
Feeding and eating. And that was like a light bulb moment because in my mind, I thought they were the same thing. And when I saw them, I was like, oh yeah, that's totally different. They're different.
They're different. They are different. So I'm a parent and I am feeding my children. It's the attitudes and the actions I bring to the table as I'm giving my children food. It's the way I talk about food, the way I engage my children in conversations about food around the table, for instance. Eating is our kids' process of actually consuming food, but the behaviors that they're developing around that as well. So, for example, we want to build positive eating habits like mindfulness with eating, right? We want our kids to recognize when they are hungry, truly physically hungry, and also when they are satisfied. Not necessarily full. We want them to recognize that as well. But I like to use the gauge of we want to get to satisfaction. That requires really understanding the internal senses that are happening in your body around food. We have to support our kids and teach them that. They get it when they're born. Infants, they have a great appetite regulation center going on in the brain and the stomach. But by the time they become toddlers and we're feeding them by encouraging them to take more bites of food, pushing opportunities to eat left and right, especially when they're not eating enough in our minds, that action of feeding can really change their regulation of their appetite, their sense of, am I hungry? Am I full? Am I satisfied? And so they are connected, eating and feeding, but they are two different things. And what's really interesting, I'll go off a little bit here from your original question, but I am very passionate about this whole building eating habits because we have a lot of evidence that shows that eating is also genetic. Like children are born with a propensity to be food focused or,
oh my gosh,
food uninterested. Yes. It's called food approach. And so some children are just genetically more sensitized to food. They're more excited by food. They're more engaged with food. They want to eat and they get excited about it. And other kids could care less. They're satiety responsive. They fill up fast. They slow down eating early. They seem disinterested in food. These are genetic traits that get expressed at the table. And so it's a very interesting, complex thing that I think a lot of parents don't recognize, that they don't understand. Why does my child like food so much? It scares me. I've had parents say this to me. It scares me. Well, they might like it because they really are genetically inclined to enjoy food. And that's not a bad thing. That's actually, I'm like, how do you think we have all these wonderful celebrity chefs and restaurateurs and food critics? They love food too. It's not a bad thing to love food. But what we want children to do is be able to regulate their eating based on their internal signals, not, oh, I see a TV commercial and now I want to go grab chips, or, oh, I always go to sports practice and there's cupcakes and juice drinks and I need to eat that because I'm at sports, right? There are these automatic associations. We want kids to really engage their internal system.
Yeah.
And that's part of what I try to help parents learn how to teach their children, that so that they do develop, good eating habits.
And this is very opposite the Clean Plate Club.
Oh, very opposite.
Grew up with.
Very opposite. I grew up with that too. Very opposite.
And that was like, don't listen to your body at all. Eat whatever the food choices are, even if you're gagging and crying, which was in my case sometimes, especially with tomatoes.
Yeah.
And like, ignore that if you're actually hungry when you sit down or when you might feel full or satisfied. I mean, that was definitely an adult skill, learning to feel. And I wasn't raised in a family that was huge into the Clean Plate Club, but I did just mindlessly eat at meals until things were gone. And it took me a while to recognize satisfaction and recognize like, oh, like I can eat to like 80% full and that feels really good. Like 90 to 110% full does not feel good.
Does not feel
especially
good.
late at night.
Right.
But yeah, recognizing those cues.
And and the interesting thing is we have the ability as parents and caretakers to teach these skills early. And that's why, I think it's really important to think about positive health behaviors from a bigger lens. It's not just get your kid out and move. It is partly that. It is partly, help your child get good quality sleep. It is, moderate social media and screen time, but it's also these other things like, how do you build a family culture of acceptance and respect and empowerment, especially if your child is in a larger body? How do you teach children to love themselves, like accept who they are, the skin they're in, and actually really like and love themselves?
Yeah.
That is a pillar. I think today we have to be strong advocates for our children, but also support them to be resilient in a society that is going to tell them over and over and over again that something is wrong with their body.
Yeah.
It's a hard one to face without the support of a good, strong family and modeling, even in schools and other organizations. I mean, this is a systemic societal issue when we really think about it, because families can't do this by themselves. Of course, they get the nuggets started and can do all this stuff at home. But if children go out in the world and everything good that the families are doing at home is not supported in schools, in, religious affiliations, in sports organizations, if that's not supported, it's just really hard to succeed.
Right. Absolutely. I love so much that one of your pillars, but it's also the first one that you share in the book, is family culture.
Yeah.
Is that the right? I was like, all of a sudden lost the title.
Family culture.
And I think that when we think of like, what are the components of, that make up what our kids' bodies look like or how our kids feel in their bodies and all this, I think that we do think of really specific metrics or really specific kind of categories. And family culture is not one I think that automatically comes to mind, but this idea of family culture is so significant. And I know you, in raising 4 kids, I'm assuming you had some family culture. I know that you had family culture, but probably specifically around nutrition, as that's your field of expertise. But I'm imagining with 4 kids, you're leaning into each of their needs in different ways. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So, I think, to me, building a strong family culture is a family that, has an identity. And in the book, I call my family, or our identity, is Family Castle. And it's interesting. We talk a lot about this, not just my husband and I to ourselves, but with our kids. Like, our family's amazing. We help and we support each other. We love each other. We're there for each other during struggles. We're there to congratulate and celebrate when there are wins. It's this cohesiveness, this unity that you can build within the family. And also, the routines and the way the family functions is really important as well. Family culture really is the culture, the primary culture that a child grows up with. And a strong, positive family culture, one that's respectful, supports the child, is there to help teach and help them navigate difficult situations, that, can go a really long way to helping a child grow up with a healthy self-esteem and feeling good about themselves. We know that when family culture is fractured or negative, kids really have a hard time weathering stigma, weathering mental health concerns. They really need their families to support them. So, there's lots of different ways that you can build your family culture. A lot of it is going to reflect what you and your parenting partner, prioritize and embody and what's important to you. There's no right or wrong family culture, but the idea is that there is a unity and a cohesiveness that is who the family is as a family.
I love that. And I love that supersedes, like, we're a family that has one vegetable with every dinner.
Yes. Yes.
Well, you might be that family, but
yes,
that's not like what your family's built around.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, family culture is around, what's important to you as a family. Is it important to give back to society? Is it important to speak up about things that you disagree with? I mean, you talk about that a lot, Sara. I know I've heard you talking about speaking up for causes that are important to you. That's part of a family culture. You will, I'm sure, are teaching your son that. I mean, this is
much to his embarrassment at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. But that family culture that's why it's the first pillar. Yeah. I really think that if you don't have a supportive family and your child has a larger body or a smaller body or somehow deviates from sort of the quote unquote ideal shape and size, if you don't have a supportive family culture for that child, they will have a harder time in the world outside. They just will. They don't have that supportive, embracing, you are good as is vibe going on in their world.
I love that. Yeah. I think that I'm actually like envisioning right now, like on any family wall, like you have, the family castle or, for us, like the Dean family or whatever it is, but like a list of like 5 things that these are the things that like take priority. And when those things are in place and those things are being upheld, then these other pieces really naturally fall in line, and our kids can feel safety and security and stability within that culture as they're navigating things that might be trickier, especially related to their body.
For sure. For sure. I have a family manifesto in the back of that chapter for exactly that. And parents can modify it or do whatever they want. It's your belief system as a family.
Yeah, I love it. I told you before we hit record that I was going to have to call myself out at one point in this conversation. So in part of the book, you talk about, well, first of all, I just want to say the structure of the book is so user-friendly. I'm someone who can't read just paragraph upon paragraph upon paragraph. And what I immediately flipped through the book when I got it. And I was like, oh, there's lots of like diagrams and like infographic boxes.
That's me.
And like little things that pop out that are like truth bomb or like big takeaway or how to put this in action or what. And I was like, oh, this is exactly what my brain needs to actually take in information. So thank you for that. One of those little boxes that popped out was about helicopter feeding. And I thought, oh my gosh, like this is me. I have a kid who's really picky, who has been increasingly picky over the course of his life, who often chooses really low. This is going to sound like really braggy, and I don't mean it braggy because it's really challenging at times. He's always chosen like, oh, I'm just going to have like steamed zucchini when he was little. Like he just wanted like steamed zucchini. And I'm like, okay, but like, that's like 7 calories. Last night he got into bed at 10 o'clock. He was like, I'm so hungry. And I was like, go down and grab a banana. He comes back up with a cucumber, like laying in bed, eating an English cucumber, like it's a banana. And I was like, well, I don't know how full you're going to feel. Like that's like 20 calories.
Yes.
And so I'm not trying to brag that he eats all these vegetables because he eats his favorite food is pretzels. So like, we're a big fan of rolled gold over here. But having a child who's more picky and also having a child who can go without food for long periods of time, but then struggles emotionally if not fueled properly, it's really challenging. And I am definitely, as a type A person by nature and only having one kid, I'm like, this is my project, is keeping him fed. And I was immediately recognizing like, oh my gosh, I spend so much time every day really fixated, especially on protein, because that's where I'm like, that stabilizes his mood for a while. So I'm like, where's the protein? Did you get the protein? What about the protein?
Yeah.
Now I'm like, oh God, have I broken him?
No. I think helicopter feeding is really a reflection of how we are morphing over time with regard to feeding. Yeah. So like you mentioned earlier, we kind of joked about the Clean Plate Club. That was very much the, 60s, 70s, probably some of the 80s, and sort of a reaction to the Great Depression when we didn't know how much food was going to be available. Families didn't necessarily have access or the means to get a full meal on the table. And so when they did have a meal on the table, they were serving food. It was, you need to eat everything and eat it right now because this is what we have. And honestly, there are some families that still are, dealing with financial constraints and access issues around food insecurity, where yes, you need to eat what we have today because we don't know necessarily if we're going to have any food tomorrow. But that morphed into, I would say, probably more pushy feeding practices. You need to take 2 bites of this, or negotiating around feeding. If you take a bite of this, you can have a dessert. And that kind of sort of segued into this whole like, eat whatever you want. There's no structure. There's no timing. Just whenever you tell me you are hungry, we'll make food or a snack, and tell me what you want to eat. And that doesn't really work out either. I think helicopter parenting or helicopter feeding is just, again, another expression of, I'm very concerned about your health. I'm very concerned about your mood and your mental well-being. And I want to make sure you're getting everything you need. There's nothing wrong with that unless your child lets you know there's something wrong with that, right? I mean, that's how
I do get a lot of eye rolls.
Yeah. I mean, that's how
like,
we know.
Mom, I know.
Yes. And so if he's telling you he knows he needs protein, he knows what the protein foods are, it's time for you to trust that he knows and let him navigate. So there's a lot of, not a lot, but there's this idea of, if you let kids sort of go a little bit and figure it out and they make a mistake, they feel crappy because they didn't get enough to eat. It's a learning opportunity. It's a conversation point. And that's where I think a lot of parents can be super successful when they're having these emotion coaching, food coaching, eating coaching conversations around, well, how did that make you feel? What do you think you could do differently? Is there a different kind of food that you might have gotten that would have made you feel better? Mm-hmm. Your child might say, all we had was cucumbers in the house, Mom. I really wanted peanut butter with with my pretzels, but we're out of pretzels and there's no peanut butter. Well, okay, now I got to get the peanut butter and the pretzels on board, and he's going to make a better choice, right? So there's way these conversations can really help children learn. I think it's when we're like, you need to have an uber healthy diet, and a healthy diet only looks like X, Y, and Z, and it just becomes burdensome to children. It becomes a lot of pressure and burdensome, and it's not motivating. Right. Parents ask me all the time, how do I motivate my child to eat better? I'm like, well, you don't do it through telling them what to eat. Right. That's not motivating. It's really just modeling and creating opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. I love all that. We do a lot of, especially as it relates to emotional regulation, when there's moments of being over hungry and not feeling very happy, content in those moments, and then eating and recognizing within 2 bites that all of a sudden everything looks better in the world. Yeah. We talk about that over and over and over again. And it is interesting. There was a lot of resistance initially to this idea that if I eat something when I'm feeling really cranky, that maybe I'll feel better. And now we laugh all the time. 2 bites in, oh yeah, that was it again.
Yeah. So he knows, he learned.
Totally knows. Yeah.
Yeah. And a good question too is, what do you know about your body? What do you know about your body in this situation?
Yeah. Yeah.
And your son would probably say, I know that if I eat, something with protein or something with fiber, I'm going to feel a lot better.
Yeah. I want to touch on gender a little bit because I think there's some misconceptions, and I'm really curious to hear kind of what your research and work has found around this. I think there's misconceptions that body image stuff, in air quotes, really primarily impacts girls because so many of us as moms were deeply impacted by diet culture growing up. But as I raise a boy and I have a lot of exposure to tween boys, it seems that body image struggles are also deeply impacting boys. It seems much more universal than I assumed before I had a child growing up kind of in this season of life. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing around conversations and children's experiences in their bodies across gender?
Yeah. I think that body dissatisfaction is a real thing for most kids, unfortunately. Yes, and body dissatisfaction is just really feeling unhappy with the size, shape, or specific features of your body. I suspect many of us have features that we're unsatisfied with. But when we're talking about body dissatisfaction in boys, for example, what I see and what I know the research tells us, it's really mostly an unhappiness with their height, their body fatness, or their musculature. And so boys oftentimes want to be more muscular than they are in the moment. Boys that are unhappy with carrying extra body fat want to be thinner. And we have research that shows, 50% of boys up to 84 to 85% of teen boys have body dissatisfaction. We know it's a growing problem. We also know that body dissatisfaction across genders, boys and girls, is occurring earlier, as young as 3 years of age. So it's really, we know that if you don't like your body, it puts you at higher risk for anxiety and depression, dysfunctional eating, disordered eating, and eating disorders. And so, again, one of the things that I think is, I feel pretty passionate about, and if you read the whole book, you'll get this by the end of the book, but there's this, we need to be better advocates for diversity of body size for our children at a younger age, because this is definitely something that can impact the health and well-being, not just the physical health, but the emotional well-being of all of our children. We need to teach body acceptance really early, preschool, toddlerhood. Like, the diversity is a beautiful thing. We've focused it, in so many different areas of our culture. We need to focus on it now with bodies. And we need to stop talking about how people look. And we need to talk about function over form, right? Yeah. We all want a healthy body. We want a healthy body because we want to be able to do the things that we can do when we want to do them. Yeah. Right. And function is really where it's at, I think.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I have like 18 things I want to say about that, but we're getting close to time. So I'm going to hold myself back a little bit, but I hear you on all that. And the one thing I do want to say that you might have, I think you'll have a response to, is the way that we as parents talk about our bodies in front of our children, whether we are talking on the phone to someone and our kid just happens to be within earshot, or we're sitting at the dinner table and saying like, oh, I'm not going to have that thing tonight for dinner because I was really bad earlier and I had a cupcake, or the way that our people around us talk to us about bodies. And so you go to a family event with extended family and you go and you're like, people say, oh, you look great. And you're like, oh, I've gained 10 pounds recently. Or someone's talking about like, oh, cousin so-and-so, I hope they're doing okay. They look really unhealthy right now because they've put on some weight. And these conversations are the things that our kids are just always hearing in the background. So when you say that body dysfunction starts at the age of 3, I'm curious how much you think that's connected to the things that our kids hear us saying about our own bodies and then also in conversations with other people.
Yeah, I think it's highly connected to parents and caretakers and other adults, teachers, extended family. Yeah. I think it's highly connected because children model the adults in their lives. And so if they hear their parents talking about making disparaging comments about their body, oh, I'm so fat, I can't get into these jeans anymore. That really, kids are going to mimic that. They're going to internalize those things. Right. And so I think, parents really have to be able to see that in their own selves and really sort of take a step back from that and figure out ways to not speak about those things in front of their children. You can still feel those things. I mean, we all have feelings about our bodies. It's not wrong to have negative feelings, but I think if it's entering into your daily life and into the conversations with your children, or your children are being exposed to shows that are disparaging to people in larger bodies, right? It's like,
which by the way happens all the time in shows and movies. It is so prevalent in, I mean, I noticed like so many movies that we watch that I'm like, oh, this is a great movie. Let's watch this one. I've seen it 80 times. And I'm just now noticing for the first time. This is a horrible way that they're talking about someone.
Yes. In the books that kids are reading, in, social media, it might be they're not seeing disparaging images of larger bodied people, but they might be seeing the opposite, this like highly moralized ideal body, and you can interpret both of those ends in a negative way and internalize those things negatively. We talked about body acceptance, and parents might be wondering, well, how do I do this? And really in the book, I think we hear about body positivity, but it still does focus on the appearance of a body. And that's going to be too much for some children. I think this whole idea of body neutrality, that we're just focusing on function, what the legs can do, what the arms can do, what the heart can do, what the brain can do, functionality and centering on function and abilities with no attachment to appearances. If children grow up to develop more attachment to appearances, that's, something that might happen down the road. But in your family unit, like what is happening every day, if you can adopt more neutrality around the language of bodies and food, even too, and health, if you can be more neutral about things and not lay on expectation or morality or virtue around these things, I think kids will fare better down the road. I think they will have a better chance at loving themselves and the body that they're in.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, Jill, this has been so good. I want to talk for like 2 more hours, but we're out of time. Can you tell people where they can get the book and connect with you and get all the good stuff?
Yes. So right now the book is on pre-order. You can do that over at hachette.com, and I can send you the link, Sarah.
We'll link go ahead and shout out all the links, but we'll also link everything in the show.
So if you pre-order the book comes out on August 13th, but if you order it before then, you will get a chapter of the book, several printable downloads of the charts. And like, for example, I have a whole size-wise assessment chart for every pillar. So it really helps you understand where you're at today with achieving these different health habits and where you can go to improve or to, facilitate these habits down the road. There's also a live event with me in October. So if you do pre-order the book, get some. Yes, live event.
Where's the live event?
Virtual live event.
Oh, virtual. Oh my gosh. Anywhere. Okay. I was like, wait, are we all going to Boston?
Yes. Oh, well, maybe if you want to.
Oh my gosh. I love that. And can you say that date again?
Well, the book comes out on August 13th and it will be in October. I haven't set the date yet, but when you pre-order the book, they will collect your email address, and that's how we'll connect with you to set up this event. If you just want general nutrition articles for children, I have a podcast too called The Nourished Child. You can go to thenourished.child.com. If you're looking for a speaker, I do a lot of speaking and consulting and have a private practice. You can go to jillcastle.com. And then on social, Instagram, I am PDRD. And on Facebook, I'm The Nourished Child.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And yeah, we didn't talk about like how decorated you are as a speaker, and like you've been on all the fancy shows as a speaker and the news stations as a speaker and all the good stuff. All the good stuff. So everything will be linked up. If people go to shamelessmom.com, click on the episode with Jill Castle, and you'll be able to link through to everything just mentioned. Last question, Jill, can you tell us how you are currently showing up as a shameless mom?
I think I'm right now just really trying to support my young adult children through all of their transitions and being the kind of mom I want to be, which is a supporter, an advocate, consultant, a good, wise resource for them. I just want them to get a great start in life and have productive careers and productive relationships, loving relationships. And I want them to be good moms and dads down the road. And so equipping them, I think that's what I'm doing right now.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here, Jill. This has been So fun. And also just really, really important and enlightening in many ways. So thank you for being here and thank you for the work that you're doing in the world. This is really important work.
Thank you for having me. It's been my pleasure. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I love talking about the book, obviously, and I'm in that phase of promoting the book. So if you have the book and you've read the book, what I would love for you to do is to head over and leave a review on Amazon. It really does help raise the ratings so that other parents can find the book. And also, word of mouth is amazing. Tell your friends, tell your loved ones who are raising kids. Tell the teachers that have influence over your own children. Share the book with your pediatrician. There's just so many applications of this book to others, including healthcare professionals, educators, therapists. So I do hope you share it. Please leave a review. And if you haven't gotten a copy of the book yet, please go out and buy it. It's everywhere books are sold. Again, it's called Kids Thrive at Every Size: How to Nourish Your Big, Small, or In-Between Child for a Lifetime of Health and Happiness. That's it for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this bonus episode. Stay tuned for more of them, as I will be sharing these amazing podcasts who've had me on as a guest here on my own feed. Until next time, make sure you give that child in your life a loving squeeze today. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Nourished Child Podcast, where the #1 goal is to help you grow a nourished child inside and out.